Hello, my friend. On today's episode, I'm speaking with Mark Fisher, and we are talking about a model for how we think you should spend your time as a gym owner. So, if you're struggling with time management as a gym owner, feeling pulled in a million directions, this is an episode for you to help you think more clearly about how you are spending your time. So, keep on listening, friends. Hello, fitness business nerds. What's up? Welcome to another episode of the Business for Unicorns podcast. Today, I'm here with Mr. Fisher. What's up, sir? How are you?
I am doing great. I'm here from my brand new YouTube studio in my basement.
That's exciting. I'm not in a fancy YouTube studio. I'm in a beach house. But you know what? I feel like because I'm
It's
at
not
the
bad
beach,
either.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited for today's conversation. Before we dive in, I just want to do a quick little shout out because we have a super cool kind of tool on our website right now that you can all get for free. And it's basically our Raise Your Rates template. For many of you, you should be thinking about raising your rates every single year. We're in a high inflationary environment, which makes it even more important that your raised rates go up every single year. And we know how hard that can be, how stressful that can be to charge more for your services on a regular basis. So we made a template that makes communicating that to your clients as easy as it can be. Fisher, you want to tell them what's in the template?
Yeah. I mean, it gives you first of all, I think a set of considerations for what you need to be thinking about when you do this. And importantly, it delineates between when you're doing what we would refer to as a price raise, which means you're maybe 9% or under. 9% is getting up there, but I don't think that's completely unforgivable. And in some situations, you have to do what we call a price correction because you're so massively underpriced. You might, for any number of reasons, decide you're going to cut once and cut deep and just do a 15% or a 20% raise is not impossible. Importantly, there's also copy pastable templates for how to write the email, because sometimes that's also the thing where we get in our own ways. We just don't have the exact words. So you can literally copy paste like, dear members, blah, 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 with like fill in the blanks. We made it super simple for you. We've done this with so many gyms. I've lost count in the Unicorn Society. It's part of why we created the step-by-step playbook, because we were doing it so often. And in our infinite magnanimous desire to serve our industry and, of course, acquire your email address, we're now making it completely free. Click the link in the show notes and get it today.
Yeah, go do it, my friends. It's a template to make your life easier and immediately, put some more money in your pockets, which is exciting. Well, let's dive in. So today's topic is actually focused on the gym owner. So, dear gym owners, this one's all for you. If you're not a gym owner, there's still going to be some good takeaways. But the topic, this was a requested topic, came in through email to Fisher, I think. Some anonymous person wanted us to talk about how to prioritize your time as a gym owner, like how to think about the hierarchy of priorities on your plate as a gym owner and manage your time effectively. And boy, listeners, let me tell you how much we have to say about this topic. This could be a 3-hour podcast, but we're going to try in 20 minutes or less to boil down what we think are some good frameworks and best practices for managing your time. Where do you want to start with this one, Fisher?
Uh, Perhaps I can start by outlining a new model that I have been working with that I think has been valuable to help people think through how one could use their time as a gym owner. So, the crudest way I think of thinking about how we use our time would be modeling, or rather mapping, the task to what is the usual hourly rate you might pay in your market or online to have someone do this. And I think when you do that, it doesn't shake out, I think, exactly like this, but for the most part, you kind of see a few different tiers. And at a high level, the way I think about this is bottom tier things, which are manual labor, administrative tasks, et cetera. Then second tier things are the fulfilling of the service, doing operations. And then top level things are related to either marketing, selling, acquiring clients, or building the systems so that everything else functions better. Right. And I would further probably delineate in that bottom layer, if we were going to say there's 5 tiers, and clearly I'm working through this in real time, I haven't decided where this is all going to land. But if you're thinking this is a pyramid, the bottom thing, the last thing you should be doing is manual labor. So these are things like mopping the bathroom floor, or making a run to Staples to buy post office stamps, whatever. That's super low skill. It requires no education. That is the lowest part of the value ladder. Then one step above that, but still below this middle fulfillment tier, you have things that are more white collar work, but are administrivia. So these are things that maybe require a little bit of an SOP or checklist you look at. And this would be things such as filling out a membership freeze form in your booking and billing platform to make sure that the membership is frozen, or answering basic membership questions in some sort of general office email for your gym. Again, probably more valuable than actual manual labor, but on balance, not the most valuable use of your time, particularly as the gym owner. So then you have the center tier, which is fulfilling the session. Now, again, depending on what you pay your coaches and what's happening in here, this can sometimes be very profitable. If you run a model where you have a bolt-on high ticket coaching program on top of, let's say, small group training, and you're doing that yourself, you're incentivized, first of all, for that service to kick ass. And secondly, you can make a lot of money doing it. And while we are generally not about trading hours for dollars, in practice, if those hours are worth lots and lots and lots of dollars, that might make sense. And then finally, you move up to this top tier, which again, I would split into two different sub tiers, right? So secondly, below the tippity top, but above the fulfillment layer is anything related to marketing and sales. And this is you writing and sending out marketing emails, looking over a content calendar for social media, and of course, not to be underappreciated, following up with leads and doing actual sales conversations. Now, in many gyms, you're doing pretty good if, as the owner, you're spending a lot of your time there and maybe some of your time doing fulfillment. But the tippy top, the top tier, is where you are now creating the systems. So this means you are in some cases overseeing not only the coaches that are doing the fulfillment, not only maybe a coach or perhaps a part-time work study that's doing administrative or manual labor for you, but you're even overseeing people that are doing marketing and sales related tasks for you. And then of course I would note maybe the ultimate layer, the version of that, maybe tier 1A, is you teach other people how to teach other people how to run the systems that run your business. And that world, you're in rare air. That's where you really have a sustainable business that really doesn't require you. So I'll pull up there. I actually have a graphic that, unfortunately, we're in a podcast and I have a good way of showing you, but it will be in an upcoming YouTube video at markfisheryoutube.com if you want to check it out. But that is the best way that I know how to think about this. And I'll pull up there, Kiers. I'm sure you have reflections.
Yeah, I think it's a great way of thinking about it, and I think it's a model. I think it'll make immediate sense to many of our listeners. I think they can easily picture it and understand it. And you started to do this, but I wonder if you can talk a little bit more about how you've seen owners move through that pyramid over the life of their gym, because they don't start
Yes.
usually working at the top. So you just talk a little bit about how that evolves over time.
Yeah. So most owners, if you're starting, as a lot of our clients do, and this isn't everyone, but a lot of them start as a trainer, right? That's the main thing that they do. And then before they have a space, they're doing a little bit of administrative stuff because maybe they're dealing with some prospects here or there, not really in a systematic way. They may be doing a booking platform, but they need to collect the money. And then maybe they're doing a little bit of marketing and sales, but not really, because what happens for a lot of people, and by the way, this was me, if you're good enough and you're a personal trainer, you don't have unlimited capacity and you usually just have proof of concept, you're just going to get more clients because people are going to send you their friends. But ultimately, this does not a business make, gentle listener. So what happens is, let's say now you've opened up a space. Now you start to have the question on, who do I hire first? So what a lot of people want to do, which is not as helpful, honestly, is like throw money at marketing and sales. Usually that's just not going to work. It's more valuable. It's more expensive. You don't really even understand if your ad agency is doing a good job, but you know, like, okay, I need to drive more leads. So in practice, what you probably want to do is, number one, if you look at that bottom tier, either white collar work, administrative, or manual labor, that is the stuff you want to be outsourcing. Some of that you can even barter for work study and actually have it not hit your cash, because at this point in your business's development, you're going to make more money and be more valuable to the business actually fulfilling the sessions. And it's likely you prefer that rather than getting to the back end of MindBody Online, doing very tedious things, filling out membership agreements, et cetera, right? So that bottom tier, you can start to outsource. Where you begin to make the quantum leap is when you start to outsource the training to other trainers and then free up more time and energy to both learn about and sharpen your software marketing sales and devote time to marketing and sales activity. Now, I want to highlight, this is where we get a little bit of chicken and egg. It's a little bit tough, okay? So we've already talked about overseeing some work study people. Okay, well, that kind of implies you already kind of know how to do SOPs, you know how to hold people accountable, you know how to train people. Admittedly, none of that is particularly mind blowing. If you have a semi competent person, odds are they already know how to, let's say, clean the toilet. It gets a little stickier when you're trying to free up time for yourself to focus on marketing sales activity. You tend to have two issues that I see. Number one, I need to get somebody in here who can do these services. The classic rule of thumb is 80% as well as I can, but now I need to understand hiring. Now I need to understand onboarding. Now I need to understand long term managing accountability. Now I need to have existing written standard operating procedures so the experience they're giving our clients is as good as what I would do, or at the very least in line and directionally appropriate for what we do here in this facility, right? So sometimes that is a challenge because you're missing that skill set. The other issue we have is, okay, let's just say hypothetically, you got a knack for this, you've written down some SOPs, they're good enough. And by the way, in the beginning, like that's what I did. I like famously gave our first trainer like a yellow legal pad. I was like, here you go, here's the program, go have fun. And I stumbled my way through it and did okay. But then you have this issue where if you now open up free time, you have to know what to do for marketing and sales. And a lot of trainers run into issues because they don't know what to do. They're bad at it and they don't like it. And that makes sense because they're not good at it, because they haven't put a lot of time and energy into it. This is where sometimes we'll need to address limiting beliefs around how important marketing and sales is or is not to the gym. And in fact, what you often see, this is very perverse, gym owner who's in tier two finally frees up that middle tier time. They get another trainer on board. And then rather moving up the pyramid and spending time on marketing and sales activity, they move down the pyramid because they're confusing activity with achievement. And at least I know what to do. At least there's something to fill my day. I don't know how to do digital ads, and I'm nervous, and I'm not a member of the Unicorn Society, so I haven't seen the done few courses that make it that simple. So no, I'll clean the toilet, right? It's something I can do, and I know I'm getting something done. I'll go in my email inbox and I'll answer some membership emails. Again, I'm not saying that's wrong per se, or that you should ever be above doing that as the owner. I just want to highlight, because this is you, and if alarm clocks are going off, and you know, I've gotten myself off the floor, but now because I don't have these discrete chunks where I know what I'm doing, which is training sessions, I'm not sure how to use that time. I'm afraid of marketing sales, so I'm going to descend down and just do busy work because that will give me something to do until I head home for the evening.
Yeah, I think you highlighted the place where we see most people stumble, even in Unicorn Society, right? Is I think you highlighted it really well. They get to that third tier where they finally can offboard themselves from doing all the training they've been doing, and they get a few hours free, and then they hesitate. They hesitate to get uncomfortable and learn how to do sales. They hesitate to really challenge themselves to learn how to do digital or some other kind of marketing. They hesitate to really dive in and blossom as a leader or a manager, learn how to do that really, really well, or study systems or creating SOPs. And that's the place where I think a lot of people find something like Unicorn Society, right? Is like they know they need the outside help and maybe even the hand holding and accountability to push themselves outside their comfort zone to learn to grow their business. And I'll say this, that, there's something unique about small businesses like gyms in that we have this expectation, even in this model, which I think is right. This is how it works for most people most of the time. There's this expectation that you, as the owner, have to first become the expert before you can hire someone else to do it. That you climb this pyramid yourself first, and then when you're ready, you hire people to help, or you delegate it, or you hire another expert to take it on after you've learned it yourself. And I think that's right. Like that's how it happens most of the time for most gym owners we know. But that model doesn't exist in larger businesses. So the
Right.
idea that
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
CEO of a company would know how to do any of the roles in
Right.
their business first is insane. So I also want to make just a little room in this pyramid for those of you who get to, let's say, that third level. You're doing the training, you made a little space for yourself, and you realize, you know what? I don't want to learn how to do marketing. I don't want to learn how to do sales. I don't like managing people. Right? I want to say that there's a very small percentage of you that I want to normalize that it's okay for you to say, you know what? I'm actually just going to stay the trainer in my gym. I'm going to be a best fucking
Sure.
trainer in town, and I'm going to hire people who are really good at this and maybe already have experience, who can lead me, teach me. I think that's maybe a harder path for some people, but I think there's some people who probably should do that. There's some people who,
Yeah,
who go into sales and marketing and learning to do it like kicking and screaming. Maybe they
right,
should
right.
just stay on the floor because that's what lights them up. And so anyway, I just
Yeah,
want to make room for that in this model somewhere. Is that for some of you, being an expert in some of those higher level things is just may not be in the cards for you. Not because you can't, just because you don't
yeah,
want to.
yeah.
I don't know. What do you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that does happen, right? And I think that's a sticky situation because I think,
It is.
you know, part of the one approach to this that one could take in theory, and I don't know that it applies here, but I'll explain why in a moment, is who, not how, right? Because I think
Hmm.
once the business is, I don't know, and I'm arbitrarily saying this, once you're around the $3 to $5 million mark, there's enough fat on the bone. You can now bring in somebody that is a lot better at you that you're willing to pay, in some cases, several $100,000 in a really sexy bonus compensation. And they're really batters included. And you're never going to be able to, you're not going to really understand what they do, but it doesn't matter because they're going to be able to get you the results that you need. The challenge, I think, for a lot of training gyms are until you get to the gym to a certain size, it's hard to outsource any skill with something with somebody that skilled because frankly in most situations you just can't afford it. So then you circle back to this issue. Okay, well, what do you do if the trainer just hates those things? Well, I think there's an alternative model that I don't think is very sustainable, but I think can work pretty well. And not trying to be ageist, but I've just seen in my experience this works pretty well for a younger person. I don't see it work as well for an older person. And that is essentially just building a business around yourself. Now, yeah, you're trading dollars for hours, but listen, I have people I've worked with over years that can make a lot of money doing this because now you have the hypothetical gym where if you're in a smaller market, maybe you're doing 250K revenue, which is maybe not out of this world in the grand scheme of training gyms, but in practice, if it only costs you $70,000 in expenses and you're keeping $180,000 and you're in a rural market, that's not the worst business, right? So it's like maybe it's even better margins, right? Maybe you got 50K all year long, and that is one part-time coach, and then you have one part-time admin, or maybe they do work study, your rent, some toilet paper, some facilities maintenance. You don't have a big square foot because you don't need a big square foot in that type of model. That can work really well, and I think sometimes it's a better fit than trying to turn it into a quote unquote real business. And I'm not trying to be uh, derogatory towards that other type of business where you build a training business around yourself. Again, I would just highlight where I see the wheels fall off there is at some point, most people are going to want to make a transition that gives them more personal freedom. And to do that, you kind of have to go through a version of what is sometimes called the valley of death, where you're maybe temporarily making less money because you can't be on the floor as often. Because here's another issue we run into sometimes with the Unicorn Society, which is why what has become fundamental to us as we do a diagnostic assessment of your business is if you're on the floor, right, like 35 hours per week, you don't have time to do these other things, right? You're barely getting through the administrative and the manual labor. You don't have time to do marketing sales. So it's another chicken and the egg moment. All right, well, what do? I need more leads. I need to grow my business so I can get off the floor because I can't afford to pay other people, but I don't have any time to do it. Unfortunately, the answer in those situations usually is some
Yeah.
combination of being willing to make less money and grind, grind, grind. And if I were to give you one pro tip, this is a thing that we've done on several occasions in the recent past, I think is so important, is oftentimes when I look at this kind of training gym and I see the trainers working 35 hours per week, there's a very specific phenomenon where the personal trainer has not become a gym yet. They say they're a gym, they have a space, it's the name of the gym, but in spite of offering a small group model, which in theory should be averaging four, maybe 4.5 people per hour, they're still doing a bunch of one-on-ones. So their schedule is not designed in a symmetrical way. And this is multiple members in the past 6 months I've worked with on this. So in practice, their utilization is horrible for what they're doing. That requires a lot of, you have to walk on fire coals. I appreciate that to really be willing to upset clients and say, you were all snowflakes and my schedule was like, I do 9:30 on this day and whatever on this day. And if you look at the schedule, there's no symmetry to it, to saying like, okay, I'm no longer a trainer. I'm a gym now. So instead of offering 35 one-on-ones and one-on-twos, I'm supposed to do 6 at a time. So I'm now going to offer whatever you decide the bare minimum is. Maybe it's 15, maybe 20, right? Because when you do the math of if you back it out, that's still not quite enough utilization. Now, I can see the case for a certain size of business. You can maybe need a little bit more total capacity and availability. Otherwise, leads aren't going to convert if you only have sessions on Tuesday afternoon and Thursday mornings. That's not going to fly, and that's not what I'm suggesting here. I am suggesting that if you're in this moment where you're working 35 hours per week, take a real honest look at your actual utilization and then be willing, in most cases, to rip off that band aid. Because I think what you'll find is you won't lose a lot of members per se. So your revenues won't really change that much. But if you go from working 35 hours on the floor to 20 hours on the floor or 15, that is going to change the quality of your life. It's going to change your energy levels, and it's going to give you the time and the capacity to at least now give an honest go at learning the marketing and sales stuff. And to Kira's point, maybe we'll find you hate all of that, and we're like, all right, well, we're just going to build this business around you. And listen, it's your business, that can work too. But those are some hot takes there, I think, as far as how we think about this and how we might address this if we're working too many hours to actually do stuff.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that into the conversation because so often people know what to spend time on, and they just are on the floor too much that they don't even make it possible for
Yeah.
themselves to spend
And I
time on
get
the
that you're
things they
stuck. Yeah. And you're
know
like, how do
are
I
the
get off?
priorities. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. I think that's it. Well, we only got a few more minutes left. I just want to cover one more thing. Is that so many times when we talk to Unicorn Study members and they're not spending time on the things they want to spend time on, it's because they really just have not set good boundaries. They let other
Yes.
people really dominate their schedule. So you can
Yes.
just talk a little bit about when it comes to designing your week and designing your
Yes.
schedule to spend time on the priorities. What are some tips you have for people to start doing that?
Yeah. So, I mean, the first very tactical suggestion is similar actually what we just said is resist the temptation if you are newer in your business to add a 2:30 because Mrs. Rossini said, well, I would sign up for a membership, but I can only train on Tuesdays at 2:30. You're like, all right, well, I'll add a Tuesday. I really need Mrs. Rossini. Nope. If no one else is going to train at that time, you have to be willing to lose clients that have very specific and I might say unreasonable demands for when you offer your session. So I think that's one kind of boundary. I think the other sort of boundary violations we see most commonly are related to this, and this depends on the way your model is set up. But if you have a slightly more, let's say, sophisticated facility and you work in the gym and maybe you don't have an office, my gosh, it can get hard to get stuff done there because understandably, you want to be available for your clients and your team. And I would say in that situation, you might just have to depend upon not being there when you have to get the really important work done that's going to move the ball forward, or if you have an office, closing the door, and then really communicating your needs, communicating boundaries with people on your team, and in some cases, if need be, with your clients. So those are the ones that come to mind immediately. I guess I'll give one other thing, which is that if you work from home a lot, potentially having a conversation with family and your spouse. Now, if you are like me and you have an adorable little 13-month-old jihadist, well, she is not amenable to my requests for specific boundaries. But even then, at 13 months old, haha, she's very stupid. She's so dumb, my daughter. If I go down the basement, close the door, she doesn't even know I'm down here. It's an incredible move. So I think you can create boundaries sometimes by having actual physical boundaries, like closed doors, don't work there. And then, of course, the harder thing is when people are not respectful of those boundaries and having chats. So those are a few offerings.
Yeah, I think those are great. Those are great places to start. I hope, dear listeners, you're taking some good notes. 'Cause I think that those boundary setting techniques can help you start to focus your time on the things that matter most. And I think the pyramid that Mark introduced is a great place to start thinking about how you're spending your time. This is awesome. I thought it was a great conversation. Anything you want to leave our listeners with as we wrap things up?
I don't think so. I think this was comprehensive. I would just say briefly, if you've never done a time audit, that is a very valuable thing. If you go to the Business of Unicorns website and go into the blog, there's a search function. Just type in time audit. And I think that is a really good diagnostic. I don't know that you literally need to ascribe actual dollar amounts to how you're spending your time, but in my experience, most people are just not very conscious about how they're
Yeah.
spending their time. And the way most people are not conscious either about how they're spending their caloric budget with food or how they're spending their money. So the
Yeah.
difference is your body and the bank are keeping track of those, whereas no one is keeping track of the time but you. So I know some people find that to be a real grind and some drudgery, but I think it
Yeah.
is worth considering if you want more awareness of how you are currently using your time.
That's it. I mean, most change starts with awareness, and I think an activity like that just brings things into such sharp focus, and so it really can make the case for changing the way you do things. So, yeah, great one. Go grab that one, friends, on our blog, and don't forget to grab our raise your rates template by clicking the link in the show notes. And if you enjoyed this podcast, leave us a 5-star review everywhere that you listen. It really helps us find more listeners just like you who find this valuable. So, thanks for listening and sharing. Thanks for the great conversation, Fisher. I'll see you all next one.